Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Show. Here's what's coming up. Celtic finally stopped the tailing train, giving the Hoops sweet dreams of winning the season's first silverware. They'll meet Rangers in the final, but will Clement be the man to lead them out at Hampden? And can Hearts give a hiding to Heidenheim? Hello, yes, these are not the usual dulcet tones of Andrew Slavin this week, I'm afraid, but I promise I will tell you to go away and listen to something else at the end of the show. I'm Findlay Marks, Scottish Thunder, living and working down under as Melbourne City's head of creative here in the future. But joining me on the show today, from back in the motherland, quite literally still living in yesterday. First of all, he's a dandy don, a published don, and a podcasting don, retaining his place in the starting lineup this week. It's the host of the Scottish Football Forums podcast, John Bleasdale. How are we, John?
Yeah, good, all things considered. Bit of a mixed week, obviously, with a nice win over Rangers in the league, but of course the semi-final was not so good.
We will get into all of that in due course. It was the best of weeks, it was the worst of weeks for an Aberdeen fan, but we will get into that, I promise. And making his first appearance of the season, it's a man with what I think humbly is the best haircut in Scottish football media. It's Sky Sports' Andrew Dickson. How are we, sir?
Yes, not bad, not bad. Hair hasn't grown back, so well, there's a little bit of hair there actually, but yours is good as well, obviously.
I just quickly as well, Andrew, I believe some congratulations are in order because you've got some big news from the last time you were on the show.
Rangers have reached the League Cup final, so I'm assuming you're referring to my wedding. Yes, at the age of 42 and a half and a little bit more than that, I've managed to find someone stupid enough to marry me. So, which was good news. So, dentists are meant to be intelligent people, but the good Mrs. Dickson is, she's still settling into her new role as Mrs. Dickson. So, all going well. So, thank you very much.
I just thought while we're on family matters, I spent this weekend potty training my 3-year-old. So, after 2 days of cleaning up a literal shit show, shall we use that as a segue to get into talking about Scottish football?
You think I'm going to answer a stupid question like that?
We're kicking off with the industry question. So this is a new part of the show that we've been doing this year. And it's a question that came in from Andy. This might be something, given your background, Andrew, that you might be able to speak into a little bit. The question is, how do football clubs operate when there is a lot of negativity going on off the field as well as the performances on it? Are messages passed around to the manager and the players of what to stay away from, what people are talking about, like they kind of do in politics?
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably need more than one podcast to answer that one, truly. But it's an interesting situation because I worked at Rangers and it's coming up for 10 years since I left Rangers, so I'm sure things have changed a little bit, but in essence, when things are not going well, it tends to be a bit of a kind of batten down the hatches scenario where absolutely the manager and players will be briefed by the press office. I mean, that's the thing that kind of happens as standard anyway, whether things are good, bad or indifferent. My job at Rangers at the time was in the kind of the media department, so it was more about like internal output, if you like, so Rangers TV and the website and publications, whereas you've separately got a press office and they much more deal with external media and they're the kind of firefighters, if you like. But you certainly found on our side of the job that if Rangers were to be on the end of a particularly heavy defeat, you pick your language quite carefully, you don't get stuck into the players, and it's a bit more, rather than talking about them getting thrashed, you call it a disappointing defeat or something like that. You're quite strategic with the language that you use. So, and you find as well in this day and age, with social media, and you go on Twitter or X, if we're calling it that these days. I had a look at the Rangers Twitter account yesterday, I think it was, and there was very little on it from the period since Wednesday night when Aberdeen beat them 2-1, obviously, Pittodrie. So, and that's the best way to do it, because if you auto-schedule a whole load of tweets to, wish Stefan Kloss a happy birthday or something like that, and it comes the day after a heavy defeat, then you'll have people criticising and saying, read the room and you're not relating to the fan base here because we're feeling it. And you kind of find that sometimes the best policy is just to say nothing and keep quiet, because then you can't be criticised for what you say or don't say.
Was there ever much of a plan, like obviously when you were working at Rangers, that would have been around about the kind of Ali McCoist time at the club? Were there directives that were coming from like a comms perspective at the club about what the manager or the players should or shouldn't be saying? Or are they kind of left to their own devices in terms of press conferences and media briefings and all the rest of it?
No, I mean, there's an agreed party line. I mean, I remember specifically, and I think I'm probably okay to talk about this now, but at the time, I absolutely wouldn't have been. When Charles Green was in charge, there was a particular game at Forfar Athletic where Forfar knocked Rangers out of the Scottish Cup. They beat them 2-1 very early in the season. It was first round of the Scottish Cup. And Ali, I can't remember for the life of me what was said at the time, but at that point, McCoist and Green were at odds with each other a little bit. Green, I always felt, was desperate to have the adulation that McCoist had. And I mean, it's Ali McCoist. He's never, ever going to get it. You know, it doesn't matter who you are. Ali said something which clearly it was felt Green was not going to be particularly happy with, because he'd said it in a kind of huddle with various kind of press guys after the game. And I asked the question, I said, are we okay to put that on the website? And I was told we were. And then very quickly I was told we were not, by which time I put it on the website. So I remember having to pull into the car park at Tesco, loading up the laptop and quickly pulling it off the website again before it was noticed by Charles Green. So by and large, people should be singing from the same hymn sheet, but clearly, as that example kind of goes to prove that's not always the case.
There must have been, John, a kind of discernible increase probably in Aberdeen's comms since the start of the season. Have you noticed that to be true, given the blistering start up until this weekend?
Yeah, Aberdeen Twitter is usually very interesting, even when things aren't going so well. Dave Cormack's taking a step back this season, which is quite interesting because, you know, sometimes Dave he's good at jumping on the bandwagon, but when things are not going their way, he's conspicuous by his absence. But I think he said such in this season, do you know what, let Alan Burrows and the rest of them do it. I'm just enjoying my time with my grandkids and watching Aberdeen, and fair play to him. But no, it's been really good this season, and I think they've really upped their game in terms of the digital media content this season, which is always good to see. It helps the teams winning, apart from yesterday, of course, but it's really good to see, and long may it continue.
I think that's something that I'm still in the infancy of working for a football team. So I've been at Melbourne City for just over a year now, and I've definitely found things are much easier on a comms site when the team is doing well, or certainly the men's team doing well. Our women's team won the title last year, which did help, but when the men's team's not doing so well, it does make comms things a little bit more difficult. And when you are in the middle of a situation, as you're kind of alluding to just a minute ago, Andrew, you kind of have to find a way of not letting out maybe some of the details of what's happening, and you have to try and find a way of putting it across in a way of, look, this has happened, and just accepting maybe the barrage that's going to come from the supporter base. There was an incident towards the start of this season, which again, I think is probably okay to talk about now with Melbourne City, given that our director of football has kind of been on spoken about this publicly as well. But player of the season last year was a German-Turkish player called Tolga Arslan. Turned up for day one of pre-season training. He was on a 2-year contract. He had an excellent season last year and amidst of a pretty rubbish season all round for the club. He was a bright light. Fans really liked him and what he could do. Turned up for day one of pre-season training. Halfway through it, handed in a transfer request and said, basically, I won't be coming back tomorrow. I've had an offer from Japan, and it's more lucrative, so I need to go. And the club then have to put out a statement after literally putting up pictures of him smiling, giving the thumbs up, going into training that morning, that the next day he won't be returning to the club. But that went out in our comms that it was kind of reluctantly we've had to release him from his contract. So you're kind of able to allude to the fact that it wasn't the club's decision. But then that always just comes back on the club, and they think, oh, you don't know what you're doing. Why has this happened? Why is he turning up for day one? And what can you do? This is football. Like it's people that you're dealing with, and you kind of just have to work the best with it. But it can be an interesting place at times.
The dogs bark and the caravan passes. The caravan keeps moving. The caravan keeps going.
Let's look to some funnier stuff that's been going on, or some more interesting stories anyway. One of the things I kind of wanted to chat about, just briefly to tee this off, across the semi-finals and some of the games last week, there were some I thought, some pretty amazing displays from fans around the grounds. Both cup semi-finals, they were, quite extensive pyro displays. And also in the midweek game, Aberdeen fans put on a great display ahead of the Rangers game. I have seen some people moaning online about them, maybe especially in the Aberdeen Celtic game, because the kickoff was delayed because of smoke on the pitch, where they waited for it to clear. The game was delayed by 10 minutes. Pyro Queen and Hardcore Tartan Army Ultra Laura Brannan said in our WhatsApp group this week, "What's 10 minutes? It looked class."
It wasn't specifically pyro that stopped the game being kicked off in time. It was the fact that the VAR lines could not be drawn because of the smoke. I mean, that was just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, you've got this technology and you can't draw a couple of lines because of some smoke in the pitch, because, you could actually see the pitch perfectly fine, from where I was sitting. The players could see it. It was just ridiculous from that point of view. I'm still a bit on the fence with pyros, to be perfectly honest. I know you guys are fans of it. I'm still a wee bit divisive because I see people not using it properly and kids getting their faces burned and things like that. And as a father, bring my kids to games sometimes. I don't want to see that. But if it can be, I'm open to an adult conversation about it. And if there's a way it can be used sensibly, safely, and more organised, then have a discussion about it.
There was a delay at the Rangers Motherwell game as well, not quite 10 minutes, but it'll have been for the same reason. I think it's well seen that it wasn't Laura's employers that were showing the match, because I certainly think that, while the pictures at the time look great on TV, you've then got the aftermath, which knocks the match back several minutes and wreaks havoc with the TV schedule as well, I would have thought, to an extent. So I'm probably the same as John. I think a sensible adult conversation about it, because it's all fine and well to say people are being killjoys if they don't buy into it. I think it looks great. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But yeah, absolutely, I think it has to be done in the right way. And at the moment as well, the fact that there is a stance against it from authorities means that the likelihood of things going wrong is probably greater, actually. And if it is done in a controlled way, and I don't necessarily mean that the authorities control what's happening, that an agreement is reached between fans groups and authorities to do things a certain way, I think that would certainly be a logical way forward for it. So, but yeah, I mean, listen, on the face of it, it looks great, but there's stuff to clearly discuss to just make sure that everything is as it should be.
I think it's probably, just to your point, John, it's probably a very real concern for some fans, maybe some older fans or fans who have small children or whatever in there, about the safety around it, and maybe if people aren't using it properly. I mean, it very much looks like pyro and tifos there's something that's kind of come more and more into our game over the last, I'd say, 5 or 6 seasons more extensively, and it doesn't really look like it's going to go anywhere anytime soon. So in my mind, the best thing to do then is exactly as you're saying, Andrew, to try and engage with it in an adult way and figure out how, well, people want to do this, how do we do it safely, rather than banning it or making it something that you can't talk about. Because I think when you do that, you almost kind of elevate it to a level of, wow, this is something we shouldn't be doing, we're going to do it anyway, clubs get fined and all the rest of that. I know it's a divisive topic, and we've kind of mentioned the pros and the cons around this side of fan culture numerous times on the show before. We've looked into safe pyro and other options. But one thing I did want to talk about from last week, aside from the pyro but still in the fan culture area, was from the St Mirren game midweek, when they put out this incredible Beetlejuice tifo in their match against St Johnstone. I don't know if any of you guys saw this as well.
The thread around that on social media, I found really interesting going through it all, because for supporters that aren't really involved in anything like that and putting it together, they will turn up at a game, they'll see that their club is doing some kind of display, and I think probably the vast majority of people will hold up a card or whatever it is that's at their seat, and then that's it done. And people say, "Oh, that looked really good, didn't it?" But there's not really much conversation beyond that. And I found the thread really interesting because it went through it step by step about the idea, the execution of the idea. How did we do it? What did it cost? What did we use to do it? It's really interesting as well, because you can see pictures, and they're clearly at the stadium. The club has accommodated them by giving them space where they can do the work. That's not just exclusive to St Mirren. I know several clubs do that, where they allow fans into the concourses to because these tifos are massive, some of them, and they are made up by several massive sections. So I thought that was really good. It's such a simple idea, really, when you think about it, the St Mirren one, but it's brilliant, works really well. Thought it looked great.
You mentioned there the thread on Twitter. It was by a St Mirren fan called Josh McGuinness, and his thread was absolutely incredible, because I think you just see these things happening and you don't realise the work that goes into it. I mean, Laura of this very parish is part of the Tartan Army kind of tifo group that's done a number of displays at the national team games over the last number of months, and they've been excellent. But again, like, knowing how much work she's put into that and how much money it is, the coordination that's there, at times the really difficult logistical side of it that you need to get through when working with people that work at stadiums and football clubs across the nation, can be quite difficult. But yet these fans are so desperate to show this as another part and adding some colour to the game, then surely, hopefully that's to be celebrated, and it will be supported by clubs increasingly. Great to see St Mirren allowing that huge banner in and to be unfurled, because it just looks brilliant. And also as well, like, I guess this is one of the things that shows our game around the world. Like, there is such a massive part of football culture in Europe, and these things do get posted and shared all over Europe, all around the world, where they're looking at Scottish displays, whether they be pyro or tifos or whatever, and being like, that's absolutely class. So it will continue to be a divisive thing. I don't see it going away. But anyway, staying on the subject of Halloween, did anybody see what I think is one of the best Halloween costumes I've ever seen? I actually don't know if it's from this Halloween or it's just something that's resurfaced, but there's an incredible image of somebody who went to a Halloween party as Hugh Dallas. But the best thing about this image, I don't know if you've seen it, he goes in the full old Scottish SFA referee kit. He's got a kind of like dinner-sized plate cardboard coin going into his head that says 10 pence piece on it, with blood kind of trickling down his face. But the best part of the kit for me is the fact that the photo, he's crouched down on one knee, like that infamous image of him during the game at Parkhead where Rangers won the league title in 1999. I just thought this was an astonishing Halloween outfit. Were there any other Scottish football themed ones that you guys saw across the week?
I'll make the joke just now as well. Anyway, I might as well before the smug Aberdeen fan gets in, but there were a bunch of guys cutting about in Pittodrie last midweek dressed as some Rangers players masquerading to be footballers. So, it's...
I love that old mitre grey referee outfit. It's very iconic.
I mean, if we're going back to a point where we're even getting nostalgic about referees' kits as well, it's probably time to move on as well. One final thing just before we leave this section of the show. I don't know if you guys remember last season. You might remember, listeners might remember, there was an incredible song that Stranraer made about their striker, Darren Lang.
Darren Lang! It's bang! It's Darren Lang with number 5! It's bang, bang, Darren Lang for number 5!
They call him bang, bang, Darren Lang. When you need a goal, Darren Lang is your man. His name is bang, bang, Darren Lang. He's gonna do all that he can because he's Darren Lang.
Bang, bang, Darren Lang. I'll put a little clip of it in here. It's like this genuinely quite good rock song about their striker. He scored a screamer in the Scottish Cup just recently. The club just a couple of days ago have since released a remix.
They call him bang, bang, Darren Lang. When you need a goal, Darren Lang is your man. His name is bang, bang, Darren Lang. He's gonna do all that he can because he's Darren Lang.
Bang, bang, Darren Lang! Bang, bang, Darren Lang! Bang, bang, Darren Lang!
Here we, Johnny Welcome.
I've got to say, this slams just about as hard as the first one did as well. It's got that slight edge of Scottish happy hardcore festival sounding music as well.
I think he scored 8 senior goals and he's already got a song about him, and then a remix as well, which is fairly going some. But that one's particularly decent. I'm always looking for new songs I can run to when I'm on the treadmill that have got a bit of tempo to them. So it might be a bizarre addition to the playlist.
stay in League Two, and can I say, John Hanna, Muriel Gray, Ali McCoist, Lorraine Kelly, Wally's Roundabout, Kirsty Young, your boys took a hell of a beating.
Probably the biggest news this week. It's been a relatively slow news week for Scottish football, but certainly one of the biggest stories is that Lewis Ferguson is back in action for Bologna, which is terrific news for that club, obviously, but more so for the national team. He's been out for 6 months with a cruciate knee injury. He played just the final 2 minutes of Bologna's victory over Lecce. I mean, this is great news, John. Do you reckon it's maybe going to be too soon for him to be back for the Croatia and Poland games?
Yeah, I think that these games come too soon. I think he needs to get himself back up to speed in the Bologna team more regularly first before he gets back in the Scotland squad. I think we don't know if it's going to be playoffs or if it's going to be World Cup qualifiers in March, because obviously we don't know our position, but I think that's more realistic. We'll know that you guys will know that chat about the squad next week, but I'd rather see Lennon Miller in just now. But Ferguson, he'll be back in soon.
Great to see him back in action again, and obviously had a fantastic season for Bologna last season before the injury kind of curtailed that. I don't think Bologna will be massively keen to see him back in the Scotland squad, because they'll want to manage his recovery. To be coming back from an ACL after 6 months is relatively quick now, which perhaps says something about the work that he has done and the way he is committed to his rehab and getting fit again. But certainly with that kind of thing, he will now for the rest of his career be doing maintenance work on his knee to keep it strong. If he can get anything back to anything like the form he was in before, when he was getting linked to, I mean, it was pretty dead set he was going to move to Juventus in the summer, and then obviously the injury happened and that didn't happen. So if he can get back to that kind of level, and that kind of club is interested in him again, then great. But it's not going to happen if he's rushed through things. I know it's been difficult for Steve Clarke because he has been without several players in this campaign. And, when you're coming up against teams of the likes of Portugal and Croatia particularly, it's helpful to have as many players fit as you can, as many of your leading players. But Ferguson, to be fair, hasn't been absolutely established in the Scotland team yet. So is it such a loss? Probably not, and better certainly to just let him get on with things at a pace that his club first and foremost are happy with. And I'm sure if that happens, we'll see him back in the squad for sure in March.
I think that's one of the main things, isn't it? It's just the fact that before his injury, he wasn't a mainstay of the national team, but I think a lot of fans now very much would love to see him become a more integral part of the squad in an ongoing way. But I mean, we'll just have to make do with other players that are ripping it up in Serie A, like Billy Gilmore getting massive hugs off Antonio Conte as he came off the pitch, and McTominay as well, who's been ripping it too. But yeah, great news to have Lewis Ferguson back in contention for the national team. Probably a bit too soon for this call-up, but great to see him back.
Don't know how many times you've been to this ground, Craig, but you never fail to enjoy winning here, do you? I love it.
All right, let's look at the football action, and let's start where it seems most obvious to start. We'll go to Hampden, where surprise, surprise, after a weekend of semi-finals, it looks like we will be having another Old Firm Cup final to look forward to close to Christmas. Both Rangers and Celtic made it into the final of the Premier Sports Cup with victories over Aberdeen and Motherwell respectively at the weekend. John, you might not want me to, but let's start with the match from Saturday. There was a lot of optimism, quite rightly, from Aberdeen and Reds fans going into this game, especially after that brilliant midweek 2-1 win over Rangers just 4 days before it. But final score 6-0 to Celtic. What went wrong?
Let's first of all congratulate Celtic. They were excellent yesterday. They were properly on it, and they will do that to most teams when they're in that type of form, and probably beat lesser teams with a bigger scoreline as well. But equally, we weren't great at all yesterday. That's stating the obvious. I don't know if it was the occasion. I mean, we were okay for the first 25 minutes. Celtic has a lot of the ball, but didn't do a lot with it. But once the first goal went in, we just folded, and I think that's the disappointing thing, because when you saw that the way we came back a couple of weeks ago, you thought those days of rolling over to Celtic had gone, but then they resurfaced yesterday. I think there was a lot of mitigating factors. I think Celtic had the luxury of being able to rest players for the game against Dundee midweek and then bring them back for the game, whereas we played the same team that played against Rangers in midweek, most of the team that played against Dundee, and those are two grueling fixtures for us. But to be fair, McLean didn't use them as excuses. He just put it down as a bad day at the office, which it was. And yeah, it's just on to the next challenge. And I think usually when you get a defeat like that, there's lots of negative online reaction from our fans, but I think there was a lot of fans that were realistic saying, well, it was just it's the first domestic defeat of the season. It was a bad one, but we're still joint top of the table. We've got another sellout next week against Dundee to look forward to, the fourth game in the row at Pittodrie where we've sold it, which is just incredible. You would never have thought that over the last few years. So, but yeah, Celtic were excellent yesterday, and they were on it, and I can't see anything other than Celtic winning the final.
Is part of it maybe as well just the way that Taylor sets Aberdeen up? He has turned them into a very forward-facing team, a very attacking team, and I would say a risk-taking team as well. You see that even with some of the substitutions that he's made in recent games, which have broadly all gone in Aberdeen's favour, and they've been a difference between a defeat turning into a draw or a draw turning into a win. Is that maybe one of the downsides to playing that kind of way? Because we saw maybe in a couple of the goals, the one that's jumped to my head is the one where Maeda kind of like explodes forwards from what was an Aberdeen attack, which very quickly in a matter of seconds turns it into almost an open goal for Celtic to score another one. Is that maybe one of the dangers of the way that Taylor plays, that you cannot leave yourself open to these kind of results?
Possibly. I mean, with hindsight, could we have made a couple of changes with the players that we've got? I mean, Shayden Morris has made a great impact the last couple of games. Should you start him to reward him for that instead of bringing him off the bench again? Do you bring in Palaversa into the midfield and sacrifice one of those attacking players? It's easy to say with hindsight, but this is the way we play it, and it's been successful, and it was successful in getting us back into that game in Parkhead just 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, I think Celtic have learned a lot from it. Celtic had less shots on goal at the weekend than they did in that game at Parkhead. They had far more in that game at Parkhead, but the difference was they were clinical. And you mentioned Maeda, that guy was just a buzz bomb. He's just, when he's in that form, he's almost unplayable at times. I mean, Nicky Devlin's one of the better fullbacks in the league, but he struggled. Maeda was outstanding yesterday, and that's just the bottom line. Celtic's big players turned up. We lost individual battles, and maybe the occasion got to some of our players. I don't know, but it's a big learning curve. But I'm not overly worried that it'll derail our season. I think we'll be back on next week onwards.
Just looking to the other semi-final then, Motherwell 1, Rangers 2. Andrew, you were at the game. It was obviously a must-win game for Rangers, especially after the midweek defeat to Aberdeen. They got the job done, but it wasn't terribly convincing, and obviously they went 1-0 down in this game as well. Was there anything that you saw in the game that made you think that Clement is or will be able to turn things around a bit? Because even though they've maybe ground out some results in a positive way, particularly at home and in Europe, a lot of away results have left a lot begging. But it's more the performances as well haven't been that particularly good. Is it a foregone conclusion that Philippe Clement won't win back maybe the Rangers fan base at this point?
Well, I mean, I would start by saying that, in midweek you've got Clement saying that the performance against Aberdeen at Pittodrie was one of his team's better performances of the season. You then have Tavernier saying in a media conference ahead of the semi-final that he thinks he's playing quite well. I mean, I understand to an extent, to go back to the conversation we were talking about earlier on, where things aren't going well at a club, batten down the hatches and all the rest of it. I understand why you would say these things, to try to make the best of it, to try to, a bit of a damage limitation thing, but supporters are not stupid. And I think it's insulting of these guys to claim that they're playing quite well when especially somebody like Tavernier. Clement's been there for a year. Tavernier has played well in the past, and he has won not loads of trophies, but he has won trophies. He's been the top scorer on a run to a European final. He has hit the heights. So, by those standards, he's miles off it. And, he is absolutely past his best. Clement, I think, has lost the support of the support. And the problem that you have is the majority of people that I've spoken to are apathetic rather than angry. And that is a bigger problem for Rangers. If there's a bit of anger there, and there was a little bit at half time, and today against Motherwell, and you think, well, you might get a reaction to that. Rangers were certainly better in the second half. There's no doubt they deserved to win. They scored twice, they hit the post a couple of times as well. They were the better team. Motherwell didn't offer a lot, to be honest. But they were still poor, and that's the problem. That's been the problem for the whole season for Rangers. Is there are a handful of games where they've done all right. They did okay against Steaua Bucharest a couple of weeks back, but Steaua rotated 6-7 players in that game. It was a second string that they played against, So Clement said that this was going to be a transitional season. I think a lot of people accepted that, provided that there is some semblance of progress. Now, on paper, Rangers are into a final. The season still has an awful long way to go. You don't know exactly what's going to happen. I certainly don't think they'll win the league. They could get second, but the style of play isn't there. There's too many passengers at times. There's too many people do not turn up in big games. You turn up at Hampden today, and I realise it's a very long answer. You turn up today and you think, who's going to step up? Nobody's jumping out at you, and one or two did all right. But Rami has looked okay as far as I've seen so far. There's not a lot there that's given Rangers fans hope. That's a massive issue for Rangers. And Celtic swept aside Aberdeen with a real conviction, 6-0. There is nothing to say that Celtic could not do that, or even worse, to Rangers in a few weeks' time. And that's an enormous, that's a prospect Rangers fan. I'm sure Celtic fans are licking their lips.
We'll come to Motherwell just in a moment, but I just want to ask one other question, because obviously your background, you worked with Rangers at a time that was a fairly tumultuous time in the club's history, and there were a lot of things going on off the park. I always wonder, how much does that actually affect what's going on the park? Because, as you're saying, Rangers are without a CEO, without a head of the academy and director of football, and a number of other important roles. The board seem to be at odds with each other or other shareholders. There's a lot of stuff not going well off the park. But in your experience, can that bleed into then the playing group and the football staff side of things as well?
I mean, it can. Footballers generally tend to live in their own little bubble. I saw actually Sam North did something with Ian Crocker at Rugby Park after the Kilmarnock Rangers game a couple of weeks ago. And I think Ian said players don't care, and then he corrected himself a bit. He said, well, I don't mean that they don't care. Of course they care. But I know what Ian was trying to say there. It's like they are kind of a bit, not quite immune to it, but when fans are standing with their banners protesting against things, they don't notice it. They're playing the game, and they are trying to focus on the game. And of course, if people are booing at them, that will register. But they're not as immersed in it as supporters are, because for the supporters, for a lot of people, that is their life. Whether you're a Rangers fan, Aberdeen fan, Celtic fan, doesn't matter. For a lot of people, that's your life. For the players, it's a profession, and I think you're kidding yourself on if you think somebody signs for your club and they get as immersed in it as you are. They're there because the financial terms on offer have been good. The prospect of doing what you're going to be able to do at that club in terms of the level of football you're going to play at, the opportunity perhaps to win trophies, some kind of personal achievement. That's why you've gone there. You've not gone there because you are going to become, some people obviously do genuinely develop an attachment to it, but players by and large are a little bit detached from the reality that the fans are very much absorbed by. I think the further you get away from actually being a player, so if it's backroom staff, or then you go further away again and you're maybe like working within the club, that's where it's more likely that it's going to hit home a bit more, because you have supporters working in various areas of the club. So yeah, you definitely do feel that. And it's coming up for, this week it was 17 years since I started working at Rangers. In about 3 weeks, it will be 10 years since I left. And where Rangers are now, in the time that since I've left, they've won a title with total conviction, really convincing, against a poor Celtic side, admittedly, but they did their side of the job, and they did it ever so well. They've reached a European final. I don't think for 1 minute Rangers will ever get relegated back into the Championship or anything like that, but it feels as though Rangers have probably gone about halfway back from that European final back to where they were, which when I left nearly 10 years ago was, toiling in the Championship. That was the season they didn't get out of the Championship. They struggled. They lost in the playoff to Motherwell at the end of that season. Probably about halfway back. The structure of the club,
wow.
I'm sure they are trying to achieve something, and I'm sure somebody there knows what it is they're trying to achieve. But financially, it's not looking good. On the pitch, it's certainly not looking good. It's not in great shape, the club. From the outside, that certainly looks to be the case. And I'm sure within the club at the moment, in a lot of areas, it's very, very challenging.
Well, let's spend a little bit of time talking about Motherwell as well, because there was another team in the semi-final. It maybe was for them a little bit of a missed opportunity given Rangers form coming into this. I mean, they have made a promising start to the season. They're kind of slowly creeping up the league table as well. Lennon Miller, I just wanted to single out because he captained the side against Rangers. Is this something that you feel he's kind of, that's a weight he's ready for in his shoulders? Because he seems to be, and this isn't just to Scottish football fans, I saw a video where Martin Tyler on a podcast that he was appearing on went out of his way to single out how good he thought Lennon Miller was. And this is a guy who watches the Premier League week in, week out, has seen literally thousands of incredibly talented players in his life, and he went out of his way to single out 18-year-old Lennon Miller. Is this something that he's genuinely, you think he's capable of stepping up into? Or is this maybe kind of cynically, is this something that they're maybe Motherwell thinking of adding a couple of zeros to the end of his price tag if there's going to be suitors calling in January or next summer?
It's probably a bit of both. You know, it's a hell of a call to be given an 18-year-old the captaincy, let alone in a semi-final at Hampden Park. He's really impressed and played with a maturity well beyond his years, and people have been talking about that for a little while now as well. So, but yeah, I mean, I think there probably is an element from Motherwell of knowing that at some point they're not going to be able to keep hold of him. So yeah, it's probably quite a smart move from them. Just, you know, it gets people talking. An 18-year-old leading a team out against Rangers in a National Cup semi-final. You know, that if people haven't already noticed and aren't already aware of Lennon Miller, then I think that's something else that maybe just helps them do that. So, yeah, a terrific player. Been very, very impressed with him. There's a lot of talk about Scotland as well. A lot of people keen to see what he can do at that age. And, you know, we have seen players of that age come in before, including with Steve Clark recently as well, the likes of Ben Doak coming in, for instance, as an example. So I wouldn't be totally surprised. We spoke earlier on about Lewis Ferguson. I wouldn't be surprised if we maybe saw Lennon Miller in instead. Yeah,
I mean, for me, he's a guy that's he's 18, but he's got the maturity of a 28-year-old. You know, he's bossing games. You know, he's taking all the set pieces. He's running the show in midfield. Does that mean that he's ready to be a captain at that age? That's another question. But obviously, I think there's no doubt from Motherwell's point of view. They also believe he can do it. That he's got those leadership qualities in him. But there is an element of, let's try and add a few more on his price tag. And I'll be amazed if Motherwell keep him even to the end of the season. I think they'll be bids in January. I hope he goes abroad. I think it'd be better for him to go abroad. I mean, you see, we've named off Lewis Ferguson. You saw how Aaron Hickey did going abroad. You've seen Billy Gilmore's obviously went out now. I want to see more Scottish players go abroad and get these opportunities, playing a different kind of league.
One other thing I wanted just to pick up, because this is a real bugbear of mine in modern football. Andy Halliday scored the opening goal for Motherwell in that game. A well-noted and well-documented former Rangers player, massive Rangers fan, but he doesn't celebrate. And I don't know what your guys' thoughts are, but this is something for me that you don't have to go knee sliding, doing an Adebayor necessarily to the other end if you're scoring against a team that you grew up supporting or you still support or played for or whatever. But for him to refuse to do any form of celebrations, having scored a goal in a National Cup final, I just think is a bit beyond the pale. But I don't know what you guys think about that as well.
Obviously, being an Aberdeen supporter, I've seen Aberdeen score a couple of times against Celtic, and he did the exact same thing, and it riled up a lot of Aberdeen fans for that. And as you rightly say, unless he's going and goading the opposition fans when he puts the ball in the back of the net, it's not a form of disrespect to him. He's a Motherwell player. He's trying to help Motherwell into a cup final. I think even the most ardent Rangers fans are not going to be too upset about him celebrating scoring for his current employers at the end of the day. So I think he didn't need to do the whole hands up as I say, sorry, I scored against you, because it doesn't give a good look, and of course he's getting pelted in social media. I can understand why he's thinking like that. The same with McGinn when he scored against Celtic, but at the end of the day, unless you're going cupping your ears that the opposition fans are I mean, you mentioned that about, I personally thought it was funny, but there's circumstances about that. But unless you're properly rubbing it in, I don't see the issue of celebrating scoring a goal against for your team, no matter who it's against.
Absolutely. I mean, Andrew, is there maybe a slight thing to this of just a concerned Rangers fan taking it upon himself to try and get Philippe Clement sacked? Was that maybe what part of the thinking was behind it?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, listen, he's done well in his attempt if that was what he was trying to do. I think it's a case of balance in that situation. I can understand it. Andy Halliday's attachment to Rangers is well documented. He was at the club for 5 years, I think it was. He was a supporter, well known to be a supporter for a number of years before he went to the club as well. So yeah, I understand why for him scoring against Rangers might be a slightly awkward situation. I don't have a problem with just not celebrating it, and I think Motherwell fans wouldn't have a problem with just not celebrating it either, because they know his background. So you score your goal, you wait for your teammates to come to you, you take their congratulations in a kind of quiet, sort of respectful manner, and that's it, because it appeases both sides. I don't think apologising to the Rangers supporters was necessary, because Rangers fans also understand that he's got to earn a living for Motherwell, and he's still playing football for them, and he's representing them now. So I think probably a lot of Rangers fans know that if Andy Halliday had the opportunity, he would still be playing at Rangers. But he's not. His time was up. He went to Hearts. He's at Motherwell now as well. He's a Motherwell player, so it's his job to try to score against Rangers, and he did it. So no problem with not celebrating. I'm not sure it was exactly the right tone to hold the hands up to. Sorry, guys. As you say, John, it's I don't think apologising for doing the job that you're there to do was necessarily the right thing.
There will be something very much at stake, which is quite interesting about the League Cup final when it happens on Sunday the 15th of December this year. The winner will move on to 119 major trophy wins. Both Rangers and Celtic are currently tied on 118 trophies each. Celtic's major trophy count hasn't been greater than Rangers for 86 years, since 1938, when they had 34 major trophies to Rangers 33. So a lot at stake when that final rolls around.
We can't be having that, mate. You better get your finger out, all right, and make sure that you get the results.
Of course, Rangers and Celtic and Hearts are back in European action this week. Celtic play Leipzig at Celtic Park. Rangers travel to Greece to face Europa League Conference champions Olympiacos. And Hearts host the German side Heidenheim. We've spoken quite a lot about Rangers and Celtic so far in the podcast. Let's have a look at Hearts as well. It's not been a great start to the season for them. Obviously, they've changed the manager now, but they've had a couple of quite positive results so far in the Conference League. Do you see this potentially continuing, John, this week when they play Heidenheim?
Heidenheim, I've seen, are not having a great season in the Bundesliga. They're sitting 12th in the league on 10 points. They lost to Holstein at the weekend. It's Holstein's first victory of the season, so that was a little bit surprising. But they're still a Bundesliga team and still a decent side. The game's at Tynecastle this week, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, they're hosting them.
I mean, that's what they've got to hope is their leveller is, a great home crowd. Because Tynecastle is, in my honest opinion, the best atmosphere in Scottish football. I think Tynecastle is a wonderful stadium. The way it's been built and the fans are right on top here. I think it can be an absolute cauldron at times when the fans are really up for it. But it is going to be a very tough game. But Hearts can be encouraged by, since Christian's come in, they've won 3 and drawn and then Derby that they didn't play well in. Obviously, they lost that game at Kilmarnock, which is disappointing. But they've had a positive start. And obviously in Europe, they've won their 2 games, which is fantastic. And they can go into this with, I hate the term free hit, but it almost feels like, there's no pressure on Hearts for this game, because people are expecting the German team to win, the Bundesliga team to win, even if they're not the household name of a Dortmund or a Bayern. They're still a German team that's got quality in them. But they can relax a little, and who knows, they might pull off a shock. And let's hope for Scottish football they do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same as John in terms of the free hit phrase. I don't think it's necessarily the best one, but people know what you mean when you're saying that. And with 2 wins and 6 points out of 6 already, I would have thought you're probably only really needing to get into double figures to be there or thereabouts in terms of making it into that playoff round. Which then is a bit more revenue beyond the group stage, which kind of finishes sort of late January, I think, early February. So yeah, I mean, Hearts for a great start, and as you say, Critchley has had a fairly decent start to his time at Tynecastle. Time will tell if it's the right move, but certainly so far there is a bit of an upturn in results, and with that, if that continues, momentum builds, confidence grows, and certainly if you were to take something from Heidenheim, even if it's a point, that would be a wholly positive result for Hearts and really keep things trundling along for them.
I mean, it's been such a good start for Hearts in the Conference League. The away win not in Minsk. It was played in Azerbaijan, but the victory over Minsk and then the home win against Omonia. You kind of feel like if they can get something out of this, it just sets them up, because I do feel the last 3 games, which is away to Cercle Bruges, away to Copenhagen, and then they host a Romanian club, Petro Club Hincesti. You feel like there's maybe not as many points on offer in that way. So if they can get some sort of result against Heidenheim, it probably sets them up relatively well for qualifying through this, and that would be a huge achievement for Hearts. Celtic are at home as well against RB Leipzig. They started really well with the 5-1 win over Slovan Bratislava. They obviously had that fairly heavy defeat in Dortmund, but I'd say a relatively very creditable draw in Bergamo against Atalanta, obviously last season's UEFA Cup Europa League winners, and it looks like they may be learning some lessons, especially away from home now in Europe, and if they keep doing that, they've got 2 home games now in a row against RB Leipzig and Club Bruges, 2 actual very well-seasoned Champions League teams by this point and have gone deep in a lot of other European competitions, but you feel like if they can continue on the form that they've shown at home, certainly this season, that they'll be in good stead as well. Rangers, the European one, I'll just come to you quickly on this, Andrew. It's been an interesting thing that even with Rangers teams, not just this season, but in previous seasons that have struggled domestically or come a cropper on the roads domestically, by and large, it's not really seemed to have affected them, barring some results against a Cypriot team in European competitions for the last number of years. It was probably the best performance of the season away in Malmo, and obviously their biggest European win in a major European game for 20 years against FCSB. It's going to be a much more tricky game away in Greece against Olympiacos.
Yeah, I mean, I actually saw Olympiacos 2 or 3 times last season, and they've got El Kabi up front, who scored, I think, something like 15 goals in the Conference League last season. Really prolific striker. I've been to Olympiacos once, again, back when I worked for Rangers at the start of the run to the UEFA Cup final. Rangers were away to Panathinaikos on the Thursday. We arrived in Athens on the Tuesday, just in time to see Olympiacos play against Chelsea in the Champions League, so we went along to that. And when the atmosphere gets going there, it's hostile. Olympiacos, good team, clearly looking to build on what was a momentous occasion for them last season, the first Greek team to win any of the European competitions. I think what you said about Rangers and the fact that domestic form, if it's been a bit indifferent, it hasn't really gone into the European thing. I mean, certainly they've had a couple of decent results against Malmo and against FCSB, but I think the fixtures that are remaining, when you look at Olympiacos away, Nice away, the week that they play Celtic, before that they're home to Tottenham, who today have beaten Villa 4-1. Admittedly, all the goals were quite late, but that's a very comfortable victory against one of England's kind of best teams at the moment. You're away to Manchester United, who with Mirren coming in there, you would imagine will be very much galvanised by that point. Rangers have got 6 points on the board. I'm not sure how many more they're going to be taking on. You might pick up the odd draw here and there. There might be another win, and that may well be enough to take them into the playoffs. I certainly don't see them going straight through in the top, top 9, or the top 8. I think that playoff route might be about as good as they're going to be able to get. And even then, I think it's kind of 50-50 as to whether they make it.
chaos, euphoria in the away stand, blue limbs everywhere.
Let's just have a wee look back at the SPFL. We'll kind of race through this stuff because we won't do every game and we'll look through the divisions very quickly. But I did just want to have a look at Hearts again. Start there because Benjamin Beningame was back for Hearts and was incredible in their away win at St Johnstone. He set up the winner. They just look to be a different team when he's in it, John, and even the manager Neil Critchley had said so after the game, saying he helps the team play the way we want to play. He helps others play their game. He's such an important player for them coming back, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, it's ironic. He's the one that sets up the winner and he's a holding midfielder, but he uses tremendous skill to finish it off. But the holding midfield role is such an understated position. I mean, the Ballon d'Or winner is just what it plays that role for Man City and Rodri. So it shows how important that role is in this team. I'm not comparing the two, obviously, but Ingame in that Hearts team is so vital because he just does the dirty work and lets others do their job. And yeah, Hearts have definitely missed him for a while. And but it was good to see him actually getting forward, and it was good footwork to then set up the ball for Vargas to score the win. And Vargas has been really good for Hearts this season. I think he's been their best player this season. It's a nice little finish, but good win for the Jambos that lifts them off the bottom of the table. I don't think they'll be in a relegation battle. I think their neighbours might be though.
Just quickly around the rest of the Prem, Dundee overcame Kilmarnock by 3-2. A pretty unsavoury incident just before this. Julian Vetro fainted in the dressing room just before kick-off. He went to hospital, but was back in the dressing room, thankfully, at full time. But great character shown by Dundee, witnessing that happening, going 2-0 down, and then coming back to secure a big statement win. They're up to 6th now in the table. I mean, in terms of the Master versus the Padawan, the Tommy Docherty versus Derek McInnes derbies are certainly serving up some incredible matches and scorelines. Hibs and Dundee United drew 1-1. Hibs have followed up 3 straight league defeats with 3 consecutive draws. A bit more of a positive upturn for David Gray. He's kind of been left in sense about the amount of late goals that his side have been conceding.
I think Hibs are in big trouble. I think they are very much in a relegation battle right now. They can't see games out, and defensively, they are absolutely hopeless.
Just to quickly race through some big talking points from the divisions below, the Championship and below. Falkirk continue to kind of blow away most of the opposition in the league. There they are, 6 points clear at top of the table after a thumping 6-0 win over Greenock Morton. Partick Thistle, I wanted to pick this one out. They beat Dunfermline 1-0 away. But just an incredible stat. They've only conceded 7 goals, Partick Thistle. They have the best defensive record outside of the Premiership and the second best in the whole of the SPFL. They've also kept a total of 8 clean sheets across all competitions this season. I just thought that was an absolutely outstanding stat. In League One, Andrew was at the Queen of the South victory over Montrose, which is their first win after 3 consecutive losses. I'm sure they'll love to have him back, although I'm reliably informed he had 2 Scotch Prolland rolls from the executive lounge, so part of the prawn sandwich brigade there. Anyway, Cove and Alloa elsewhere in the division, they're joint top on 20 points. Paul Hartley's Cove are top on goal difference. They beat Dumbarton 3-0, and Alloa annihilated Annan 5-0 with Connor Salmon scoring the 5th as well. It's his 150th goal in club football. Poor Inverness are still on -2 points at the bottom of the table. And in League 2, Elgin held on for a 1-0 win despite playing over half an hour with 10 men. Russell Dingwall being sent off, and yes, Russell did start his career with Ross County, who play at Dingwall. Very nice little fact. The victory put them, though, level on points with leaders East Fife, Dick Campbell's East Fife, who drew again, this time with Stirling Albion. That game ended 1-1. Clyde enjoyed some late drama. The Bully Wee went 2-1 down with 3 minutes left for play before Marley Redfern equalised after 2 minutes of stoppage time. It's their new manager, Darren Young's first match at home as manager. So hopefully things will look up for them That is everything from the Scottish Football Show this week. It just remains for me to say thank you very much to Andrew and to John for joining me. Now it's just simply time to say go and listen to something else. Bye.